Wow, this week in combat sports has been something else. Cris Cyborg, she just keeps adding to her legend, you know?
Yeah, it's more than just a win at this point. 5 different organizations, champion in all of them. Crazy.
So let's break this down a little. We're talking about Cris Cyborg, a name synonymous with dominance in women's MMA. She just keeps racking up those championship belts. This latest win puts her in a league of her own, wouldn't you say? What makes this victory so significant?
It really cements her legacy as one of the all-time greats, in the women's division for sure. Most fighters, they can only dream of becoming a champion once in just one major organization, and here she is conquering 5.
It's unheard of, really.
Totally. We're talking Strikeforce, Invicta FC, the UFC, and now the PFL. And that's not to be overlooked. The PFL is a big deal.
Yeah.
Their season format, that $1 million prize, it all makes for some really exciting fights. But this win, it wasn't just another win for Cyborg, you know. She displayed a whole new level of skill.
You're right. She's known for that raw power, but in this fight, she showed everyone she's got the technique to back it up.
Absolutely. Larissa Pacheco, her opponent at this PFL event in Saudi Arabia, she's no pushover. But Cyborg, she controlled that fight. Unanimous decision, no question. And get this, she even mixed in some takedowns. We don't see that side of her very often.
It's like she's always evolving. It makes you wonder, with her talking about 3 more fights before she retires, who's even left to challenge her?
That's the question, isn't it? Who can really push her at this point? Finding a worthy opponent is getting harder and harder. It's almost as if she surpassed the divisions, you know?
Especially with the UFC still without a women's featherweight division. Do you think Cyborg's dominance could force their hand?
It's definitely possible. There's been a lot of talk about that, about the UFC finally adding a 145-pound division for women. And Cyborg, she's kind of become the face of that movement.
She's like a force of nature changing the sport. Speaking of change, we've got to talk about this Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul announcement.
That one's got everyone talking, but I'm not so sure it's for the right reasons. You know what I mean?
Okay, so for those who haven't heard, we're talking about Mike Tyson, the legendary former heavyweight boxing champion. The man's an icon, but he's also 58 years old. And he's going up against Jake Paul, a 27-year-old who, well, he made his name on YouTube.
And that's where the controversy starts. It's not just experience, it's age, legacy. It really makes you question what makes a real fight these days.
Exactly. You've got Tyson, a legend, past his prime, sure, but still an icon. And then there's Paul. He's got a 10-1 record, but a lot of people see him as more of a showman than a serious boxer.
Right, and that brings up some tough questions. Is it even a fair fight? What's motivating these guys? Is this the direction boxing is headed? It's
Uncomfortable.
definitely grabbing headlines.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of attention the sport needs. And you know Jake Paul, he never misses a chance to stir the pot. He posts this sparring footage of himself knocking down DeAndre Savage, a professional boxer.
Yeah, and the boxing world did not like that. Not one bit. Sharing sparring footage is a big no-no. It's like he doesn't understand the unwritten rules. It was a bold move, for sure. Do you think it's just mind games trying to rattle Tyson, or is he in over his head?
It's tough to say. It could be calculated, you know, try to get in Tyson's head before the fight. But it could also be a sign of his inexperience. Either way, it's got everyone talking. This fight, it's scheduled for November 15th, and it's less about boxing and more about spectacle now.
So why are they even doing this? What's the point? Money, legacy, ego.
Probably a bit of all of the above, to be honest. But hey, any publicity is good publicity around.
Well, Conor McGregor seems to be a believer in that. Remember when we were talking about spectacle, attention-seeking?
How could I forget?
Well, McGregor, never one to shy away from the spotlight, he went ahead and placed a pretty hefty bet on Francis Ngannou losing his PFL debut this past weekend.
We're not talking chump change here either. This was $500,000.
He was so sure that Ngannou would lose, even predicted a first-round knockout. For those who need a refresher, Ngannou, he left the UFC to sign a better deal with the PFL. He was the UFC heavyweight champion, looking for better pay and opportunities.
It was a big move. A lot of people were curious to see how he'd do in his first PFL fight. Turns out, Conor McGregor was one of them. And let's be honest, if Ngannou was still in the UFC, a fight between him and McGregor, that would be huge.
For sure. But it seems like McGregor saw an opportunity, or maybe he's trying to settle some old scores. Whatever the reason, his gamble didn't pay off. Ngannou, he demolished his opponent, Renan Ferreira. First round, just like that.
And that was a statement win if I've ever seen one. And Ngannou basically said, don't forget about me. And it cost Conor McGregor a cool $500,000.
Talk about putting your money where your mouth is. But here's the kicker. Jon Jones, he had a field day with McGregor's loss.
Can you blame him? Those two, they've got history, trash talk, social media jabs. It's a whole thing. And remember, Jones and Ganu are both considered top contenders in the heavyweight division, so there's that added layer of rivalry.
The internet had a field day, memes, reactions. It's like a real-life drama unfolding, but with way more knockouts.
Speaking of which,
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
right back to the weight cutting issue. It's a constant in combat sports, and this week, it's front and center again.
We talked about Cyborg potentially lacking competition because of limited weight classes, but at UFC Vegas 99, we saw the other side of it with Jocelyn Edwards. She won her fight but missed weight, and it cost her. What happened there?
So Edwards fights at bantamweight, and she beat Tamias Vidal by submission in the third round. Usually a finish like that means a bonus, but she missed weight by 3 pounds.
Which, in MMA, that's a pretty good deal. Those weight classes, they're there for a reason.
Exactly. And the UFC, they made an example out of her. No performance bonus.
That's gotta hurt, especially after such a decisive win.
It's unfortunate, but it really underscores the seriousness of weight cutting in MMA.
Yeah.
These fighters put their bodies through so much to make weight.
And we're talking about serious health risks here. This isn't just about numbers on a scale. This is about their well-being.
Absolutely. And sadly, we're reminded about the dangers with the situation surrounding Lady Di Silva.
Wait, who is that? What happened?
This is where it gets really serious. Diane Silva is a PFL fighter, and she's been in a coma for over a month now. It seems like a weight cut for her Bellator debut went wrong. She was supposed to fight back in September, but...
It's terrifying when you think about it. This weight cutting, it's not just about making weight, it's a health risk.
It really puts the whole issue into perspective. And honestly, the fact that there are reports of the PFL trying to keep it quiet, that's even more concerning.
Keep it quiet, really. I mean, given how serious it is,
Yeah.
It doesn't seem right.
Right. You have to question their priorities, you know. Is fighter safety really top of mind? It makes you wonder.
It does make you think. Is this pressure to make weight, even if it means putting yourself at risk, is that just part of the fight game?
It's definitely ingrained in the culture, yeah. Weight classes, they exist for a reason. We want to see fair fights. But there's got to be a better way, a safer way for these athletes to compete.
So this weight cutting issue, it's more than just the numbers on the scale. It's about fighter struggles, safety concerns, the business side of it all. It's a lot. What are your initial thoughts hearing these stories?
It's complicated. You've got these fighters, they're making choices, often under immense pressure. But you've also got organizations, promoters, even fans. They're all part of this system, and sometimes it feels like spectacle comes before safety.
It's a tough one, for sure. But speaking of tough, let's talk about Anthony Hernandez. He had a big win at UFC Vegas 99. But there's a twist there, right? Something about the bonus.
Yeah, Hernandez, he looked great. Beat Michel Pereira by TPO in the third round. Dominant performance. But he was the only fighter on the whole card to earn a Performance of the Night bonus.
The only one. That seems... Is that common?
Not really. And some people are saying it's because the UFC, they're trying to save money, be more careful with bonuses.
Interesting, because there were other finishes that night. I mean, Jocelyn Edwards, she got a submission win, even with missing weight.
And I think that's the point they're trying to make. You miss weight, there are consequences, even if you win.
So even in victory, there's always that reminder of the business side of things. These fighters, they're not just athletes. They're negotiating contracts, trying to make a living. It's a lot to balance.
It definitely adds another layer to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But that's what makes it so compelling. That mix of athleticism, showmanship, and business.
You're right about that. Now, before we move on, I have to ask you about Brad Katona. What a wild ride, winning the Ultimate Fighter twice. You'd think the UFC would be rolling out the red carpet for him.
You'd think so, right? I mean, talk about beating the odds. The Ultimate Fighter, that show was tough. Fighters putting it all on the line for a UFC contract.
And this season, Katona even had to switch teams. Started with Team Chandler, ended up on Team McGregor, and he still won the whole thing.
Talk about resilience. He's got the talent, clearly, and he knows how to perform under pressure, which makes that loss in his next fight even more surprising.
Yeah, that loss to Jean Matsumoto, it was a tough fight, for sure. But you'd expect him to ride that Ultimate Fighter high a little longer.
It just goes to show you, in this sport, nothing is guaranteed. Every fight is a new challenge.
And sometimes a chance to learn and grow.
Exactly.
You know, it's funny, all these stories, they offer a glimpse into this world, the world of combat sports.
They really do. You've got Cyborg defying expectations, Tyson and Paul, this clash of generations, what it means to be a fighter in this day and age.
And then there's these bigger issues. Weight cutting, fighter pay, the pressure to perform, it's all connected. And the thing is, through all these different stories, you see this incredible drive, this will to succeed.
It's inspiring, really.
It is. Cyborg, chasing history, Brad Katona, bouncing back from that loss, even McGregor trying to, I don't know, recover from that bet. It's like they all share this warrior spirit.
It's definitely part of what makes this sport so captivating. You just never know what's going to happen next, who's going to rise to the top, what crazy thing's going to happen next.
And that's a wrap on another deep dive into the world of combat sports. We covered it all today. Historic wins, controversial matchups, the business, the weight cutting.
It's been wild.
What really stood out to you? What are you still thinking about?
I got to say, the weight cutting, it's a problem without an easy answer,
Yeah.
you know. But Diane Silva's story, that's a reminder that this is serious stuff.
I hope that situation makes everyone in the sport step back and really think about the risks involved.
Yeah.
As for me, I'm still thinking about Cyborg. Can anyone stop her? She's a once-in-a-generation talent pushing the limits of what's possible in women's MMA.
It's a good time to be a fan, that's for sure.
You got that right. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the future of these fighters, these divisions, the whole sport. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep that inner learner satisfied.